The Brazen Bull. Oh, the Brazen Bull. A classic in the chilling collection of historical execution methods. Picture a massive bronze sculpture shaped like a bull, complete with a door for loading people like a macabre meat locker. This creepy contraption was whipped up by a sculptor named Perilos for Phalaris, the tyrant of Acragas in Sicily, who really knew how to put the rage in outrageous. The idea? Stuff a person inside, light a fire underneath, and as they roast, talk about a bad barbecue, their screams would bizarrely morph into bull moos thanks to some acoustic engineering wizardry. Death by molten metal. In ancient Israel, they didn't just punish. They turned execution into a nightmarish art form. Picture this. Someone's convicted of a serious crime under Mosaic law. Think incest or adultery with a priest's married daughter. But here's the kicker. They didn't just set you on fire or toss you into flames. Oh no, they were far more creative. First up, a bit of strangulation courtesy of two witnesses using a soft rope. Because hey, let's keep things humane. Just as you're gasping for that last bit of air, here comes the grand finale. Molten lead poured down the throat. Yeah, that's right, not over, but inside. Talk about a literal meltdown. It's one of those methods that make you appreciate the simplicity of just being thrown to the lions. Poena Kule. Next up, let's dive into the wildly bizarre Roman punishment known as Poena Kule, or the penalty of the sack. This isn't your everyday kind of sack race. It's far grimmer. Imagine being on the wrong side of the law in ancient Rome and hearing you're about to get the sack. You'd probably hope it means you're just losing your job, but no such luck. First, they'd give you a thorough beating or a flogging, just to set the mood. Then, as if that wasn't enough, you'd be sewn into a large sack with a lively mix of company. A snake, a chicken, an ape, and a dog. It's like the worst group chat ever, but in a sack. Once everyone's packed in there, off you go into the river or the sea. Flaying. Flaying is as gruesome as it sounds. This ancient method of execution involved peeling the skin off the victim, usually starting with strategic cuts to the legs, buttocks, and torso. Then, imagine the horror as the skin is removed as intact as possible. This bone-chilling practice wasn't just for show. It was used around the world, from ancient Rome to medieval England and the Ottoman Empire. But it was the kings of the Assyrian Empire who really took it to another level. They didn't just defeat their enemies. They turned their skin into a public display of power and humiliation. According to historical records like the Rassam Cylinder, they would hang the corpses on stakes, strip off their skins, and plaster the city walls with them. The waist chop. The waist chop takes the cake for sounding like a horrifying new kitchen gadget, but is actually an ancient execution method with a twisted twist. Li Si, who was a big deal in early imperial China, as a writer, politician, and philosopher, found out the hard way that politics can indeed be cutthroat, or in his case, cut waist. First, they went Picasso on him, removing his nose, then a foot, then a hand, and for an added measure of brutality, his manhood. But the grand finale? They chopped him in half at the waist with what can only be described as the sword of Damocles on steroids. And because misery loves company, they wiped out his entire extended family, just to make sure the message was clear. Don't mess with Zhao Gao. An eye for an eye. The first Babylonian Empire really took an eye for an eye to heart, and let's just say their approach to justice was extremely balanced. Back then, if you knocked someone's teeth out, you'd better start saying goodbye to your own pearly whites. And if you were caught lying, say adios to your tongue. But here's where it gets spicy. Looters caught during a house fire weren't just arrested. They were thrown right back into the flames. Talk about instant karma. And burglars? They'd hang out, quite literally, at the very place they tried to rob. As for the builders, you'd better hope your construction was solid because if it collapsed and killed someone, it was game over for you too. The boats. Imagine being sandwiched between two boats, your limbs and head sticking out while being force-fed milk and honey. Welcome to scaphism, an ancient Persian punishment for the worst offenders. The victim, like Mithridates, was slathered with this sweet mixture, which then attracted a swarm of insects. Stuck under the sun, he became a living feast for flies. The situation escalated as diarrhea set in, inviting more insects to dine directly on him. This brutal method from antiquity really puts a sinister spin on getting the boat treatment. Dismemberment by trees. For a lesson in extreme military discipline, let's take a gruesome trip back to ancient Rome under Emperor Aurelian's rule in the 3rd century. Roman soldiers knew better than to mess around, especially with another man's wife, unless they wanted to experience dismemberment by tree, a punishment as brutal as it sounds. Here's how it worked. The guilty soldier would be tied upside down, his feet bound to 2 bent and tension-loaded tree branches. Once the branches were cut loose, the trees would snap back to their natural positions, ripping the soldier apart in a horrifying spectacle of martial discipline. This method wasn't exclusive to Rome. It was also used in ancient Persia, and shockingly reported to still be in use there by a British diplomat as late as 1808. Dropping onto rocks. If you thought falling off your bike was bad, imagine being an ancient criminal sentenced to literal death from above. This high-flying punishment involved throwing offenders from a great height, like the infamous Tarpeian Rock in Rome. Here, convicted murderers and rebels didn't just fall 25 meters down the side of the Capitoline Hill. They plummeted amidst public jeers and eyes, landing in a gruesome display of Roman justice. This method of execution, dating back over 2,500 years to the time of Roman kings and used until the 1st century AD, was not just deadly, but deeply shameful in the public eye. Burning in a wicker man. Burning alive inside a wicker man might sound like a plot straight out of a horror movie, and it literally is, thanks to the creepy 1973 film of the same name. But this fiery fate wasn't just Hollywood imagination. It was purportedly a chilling reality among the ancient Celts, according to none other than Julius Caesar. While the archaeological proof is thin, ancient texts, including Caesar's writings, bring this grim practice to light. Caesar described the Druids as wise men, but was clearly horrified by their sacrificial methods. They'd construct colossal figures from osiers, wicker, stuff them with living men, usually criminals, and then set the whole thing ablaze. It's a terrifying thought, being trapped inside a giant tinderbox, the flames creeping closer. And if they ran out of criminals? Well, no one was really safe. Clubbing. Clubbing in ancient Rome wasn't about pulsing lights and dance beats. It was a lethal form of military discipline, known as fustuarium. This brutal penalty was reserved for soldiers who showed cowardice, such as deserting their posts or fleeing in battle. The unfortunate souls faced their own comrades, who served as executioners using blunt instruments to deliver a grim end. This wasn't just about punishing one individual, it was a stark message to the troops about the consequences of cowardice. However, after particularly disastrous battles, the Romans sometimes resorted to an even harsher measure called decimatio. Imagine this: a cohort of about 500 men divided into groups of 10, and they draw lots. The one who draws the shortest straw? He gets clubbed to death by the other 9. Regardless of his actual conduct during the battle. Family extermination. In ancient China, there was a punishment that made mere death seem merciful, miezu, or the 9 kinship exterminations. This brutal sentence wasn't just for the one found guilty of treason, which could be as trivial as irritating the king. No, miezu meant wiping out your entire family tree, parents, children, siblings, plus uncles, aunts, cousins, and even in-laws. The preferred execution method? Slow slicing, a gruesomely precise way to ensure maximum suffering. If you enjoyed this video, then check out our video on military martial art styles. Don't forget to subscribe for more.